When I was 4 years old, something incredibly traumatic happened to me in a kindergarten classroom. At the time, it seemed disastrous and tragic, like the world was swallowing me up whole and going dark, and it was incredibly terrifying. For years, I wanted to change what had happened. I wanted to go back in time to make those horrible few days from my life disappear. But of course, I figured out that no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't do this. In fact, I learned that the more I tried to run away from them, the more they just ended up haunting me. So I eventually decided to run in the opposite direction, right at the emotional pain. And while difficult, this proved to be much more helpful for me. And I soon learned to see my early childhood trauma as a kind of resource, a secret weapon, if you will, one that I could kind of tap into and wield and really use to motivate both myself and the others around me. And really, when I think about it, what happened to me on that fateful morning in that kindergarten classroom is the very reason why this site exists today. The very reason why I am actually able now to help thousands and thousands of people around the world make their lives better by feeling better. So if you're curious, I want to share my story with you now. I mean, yes, it's hard to talk about it even today, but I think that in order for you to really understand what we do here at VitalityVille and our grander mission, it's important to tell this tale because it's this story that drives pretty much everything we do here, including how we came to be. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Matthew James, and I am the founder and CEO of VitalityVille. For years now, I've dedicated my life to fighting the mainstream medical establishment's concept of health by strongly advocating the use of alternative health and wellness strategies whenever and wherever possible. And my entire journey began that fateful chilly winter morning in that yellow and red brick schoolhouse kindergarten classroom when my first traumatic experience unfolded. This is when I first woke up, really, when I was just a little boy. You see, I have almost died twice. Once when I was about 4 years old, and again when I was 17. Both times I experienced a life-threatening anaphylactic reaction where my throat rapidly closed over and I just couldn't breathe. But the first time this happened was by far the worst, the most traumatic and the most impactful for me. It was around 10 o'clock in the morning at Dr. Phillips Public Elementary School when my skin started turning blue and my breathing stopped. At this point, I collapsed alone by myself off in the corner. Thankfully, a parent volunteer quickly noticed that something was wrong, and I was promptly carried to the hospital, where the emergency room doctor told my mother that I was, lucky to be alive, since I had hardly any oxygen left in my bloodstream upon arrival. I still bear the scar on my right arm, where the doctor flooded the massive epinephrine injection into my tiny body to save my life. I spent the next week or so semi-conscious, filled with tubes and needles, in prison really, unable to hug or touch my parents, but instead was relegated to watching a series of disturbing, blurry and frightened images of them staring back at me through the plastic oxygen tent cover. It was Christmas Day, which is also my birthday. Now, this traumatic experience triggered a long series of personal health issues for me and created chronic, ongoing, and worsening pain and suffering for, decades to come. I developed severe atopic dermatitis, asthma, had relentless ear and eye infections, including strep infections, and I developed serious food and environmental allergies. My diet became extremely limited until basically I was just eating corn and rice and potatoes each and every day. And sadly and understandably, I became the butt of every schoolyard joke and the easy, fragile target of every playground bully in sight. I mean, it was horrible. To make matters worse, I was put on all the medications available, even the experimental ones. I had all the shots, all the antihistamines, all the steroids, all the inhalers, all the antibacterials, the whole deal. Of course, none of these things actually helped my underlying condition, and my health situation only got progressively worse and worse as the years went on, to the point eventually where I could hardly walk. I found it extremely difficult just to get out of bed, and psychologically my mood was broken, sending me spiraling into depression and spiritual darkness. All the shots, all the steroids, all the antibiotics, and my limited, thoughtless diet continued to blow holes through my gut walls and stripped my body of its natural, God-given ability to protect itself from invasive viruses and infections. Toxic things that normal people could eat and tolerate went right through my inflamed and swollen belly, unfiltered, directly into my bloodstream, distributing toxins throughout my body. These toxins primarily accumulated in my skin organ, and my skin accordingly continuously cracked, flaked, oozed, and bled all over the place. I mean, often as a child, I would awaken only to find that my eyes were stuck shut from all the toxic overload and discharge. Sometimes half my face would even be stuck to the pillow, and the fabric would actually need to be peeled off in a bloody, gooey mess like some sort of Band-Aid thing. Frequently, out of frantic desperation, not knowing what else to do, my own mother would tie my hands to the bedposts at night so that I wouldn't rip my skin apart from all the uncontrollable deep scratching. Ironically, the medications sold to me and my family only functioned to make my underlying health issues progressively worse. In fact, they themselves, through their side effects, actually amplified and created the very horrible conditions they were supposed to be solving. What? For example, I learned that one of the side effects of my asthma inhaler was, you guessed it, asthma. And one of the side effects of my anti-anxiety rash medication was anxiety. And perhaps worst of all, side effects for the many steroid creams I used on my skin included eczema. When you really think about it, from an evil genius perspective, this kind of makes a lot of sense in a way. After all, without empathy, why wouldn't future big pharma CEOs bake future profits into their present-day cures? In other words, their goal ultimately was to never get me feeling better, but rather it was really to get me hooked on and addicted to their medications, to manage my unsolvable condition into a gradually ever worsening state, a state that would require even more and more of their medications, and then some more. Unfortunately, this chronic cycle of suffering went on and on for me for many, many years, until one day as a young adult, I made a shocking discovery. And it was at this point I decided that, enough was enough. And I finally started to take some real and decisive action with my health. You see, largely by chance, I stumbled across the fact that one of my experimental immune suppression ointments, the same one that I was applying daily to my skin, actually had a black box cancer warning on it. Needless to say, I was seriously shocked. With a little bit of research, I quickly realized that my black box medication was very likely to cause a whole host of seriously horrible effects, fatal, life-threatening, and permanently disabling adverse reactions, and even death. Needless to say, at this moment, a light bulb went off above my head, and I was just, flabbergasted. shaken, really. Thoughts started racing around my head. I mean, why didn't my doctors tell me about this? Why didn't they insist that my parents read the medication pamphlet inserts? Why did they discuss or mention any of these serious associated risks? I mean, at all. That very day, I decided that I needed to do something different. I had already almost died twice, right? And now, apparently, I was right back where I started again in that kindergarten classroom years before. Right back on track to be dead again. So I thought, well, enough of this. And I went cold turkey, and I stopped that very day taking all my prescribed medications. Now, what happened next was really remarkable and, well, excruciating. With all the immune suppressants and toxic chems suddenly gone, my body was finally able to actually start restoring itself. But the detoxification process that resulted was wickedly, excruciatingly painful. Many people know this as topical steroid withdrawal, and it is a lengthy, terrible process which lasted many years for me. Topical steroid withdrawal, as it's commonly known, is completely and utterly debilitating. Symptoms include heightened burning sensations of pain in the skin, extreme flaking and shedding, peeling, swelling, splitting, erythema, infection, redness, wrinkling, oozing, pus-filled bumps, pain, insomnia, hair loss, shivering, exhaustion, depression, and really disability. At this point, completely desperate and in total disrepair, I finally began to look up and research alternative approaches to health and well-being for the first time. And I was surprised to find that there existed many modalities that were out there that I could use to support my ongoing recovery. Strangely, I had never even heard about most of these modalities. Many of the awesome practitioners I discovered at this point in my life have since become friends, and each in their own way, they all managed to teach me the exact same life lesson, namely that medications and antibiotics and really big pharma can't ultimately resolve chronic health issues. Rather, in the end, only the human body can do this. So from their wise perspective, the goal is to get the body functioning properly and effectively again. So I dove in and tried a slew of alternative approaches to get my body back on track. I tried acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, fringe doctors, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, detoxes, Rife machines, IV drips, cleanses, all different sorts of extreme diets, fasting. I mean, I didn't eat for 120 days in 1 year at one point. I mean, the list goes on. And with time, my research, my diet, my detox regimen, in conjunction with the huge range of supporting alternative health and wellness and awesome practitioner pros I discovered and came to love along the way, these things actually managed to move the needle, to get my body back to the point where it could once again function to restore itself. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong here. This was an extremely difficult learning process for me, and I mean, it took years for me to figure this stuff out. But my cracked, oozing, eczema-ridden skin eventually transformed back into the skin I had as a toddler, the skin I remember having before the frightful kindergarten incident. I mean, I could tan again. There was moisture, elasticity, freckles. Of course, I still bear some of the battle scars, I mean, to this day. But my spirit for life was absolutely renewed. I could sleep soundly at night again for the first time in really decades. And I stopped feeling out of breath, wheezy, anxious, achy, and restless all the time. Now, this being said, I truly, truly believe that I'd be dead today if it weren't for these wonderful and talented wellness practitioners I discovered and the knowledge and strength they so graciously imparted to me. In other words, I owe them big time. Accordingly, I have since dedicated myself and my life to strengthening and giving back to them and to the alternative health and wellness community really as a whole. Consequently, I am now fully engaged in the battle against Big Pharma's insane approach to you and your family's general well-being. And I'm completely convinced that this is a battle that must be won. So whether you're someone looking for assistance with their own health issues like I once did, or you're a natural health and wellness practitioner, working hard each and every day to get your clients back on track, either way, I want to sincerely thank you for being here and choosing to join this team on the battlefield. Really, take a second right now just to congratulate yourself. You see, by virtue of the fact that you're here right now watching this video, you must be part of the awakened few, a leader, a visionary, empathetic, and hopeful. Somehow, some way, like myself at one point, you managed to figure things out and you left the cave. And this is always something worth noting and celebrating. So take a moment to reflect on how super important what we're doing here at VitalityVille is. This isn't just another site or some fly-by-night trend. No, it's a mission, possibly the most important one of our lifetimes. It's a group of like-minded individuals, thousands strong now. And being here at VitalityVille right now, you are a part of the solution, part of something really big, a family, really, supported by thousands and thousands of people just like yourself from all around the world, standing together, hand in hand with a positive perspective, strong, trying to educate, connect, and help others through the promotion of natural health and wellness principles. And by the way here, these principles have been around for a long time, since at least the time of, Hippocrates back in ancient Greece. Hippocrates knew thousands of years ago that only the body can restore the body. A basic truth that's been seriously and probably intentionally corrupted since at least the beginning of the early 20th century. So to conclude here, the point I really want to make is that instead of wallowing in my years of suffering and playing victim, which is really exactly what they wanted me to do, I decided, heck no. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna do something about it. I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna fight and devote myself to leading others out of the same pain trap that I found myself in. And really, this means helping alternative medical practitioners thrive by, among other things, helping people in need find them, which is becoming increasingly much more difficult in today's, technocratic, big pharma controlled, shadow banning and censorship driven world. So please know that you being here right now, watching this video, you are in this very moment making all those years of suffering that I endured actually worthwhile and mean something. And thank you so much for this. Really, without that suffering, I would, one, likely not be alive right now, and two, I wouldn't have been motivated or aware enough to create the VitalityVille platform, which now functions to help thousands and thousands of people feel better each and every day around the world. So that's it. I hope you now have a much better sense of who I am, what I'm all about, where I'm coming from, and why really we do all that we do here at VitalityVille. But really, my own traumatic kindergarten story is just one of many thousands of interesting tales here in the larger VitalityVille family. I mean, everyone, including you, I imagine, has an interesting story to tell. I mean, after all, this is exactly the reason why you found your way here. So thanks for listening. Take care of yourself and your family's health in the best way possible. And don't ever be afraid to tell your own story. I mean, you'll be surprised at just how many people your story can inspire. And again, I'm Matthew James, and from all of us here at VitalityVille, keep on fighting the good fight.